Some of you might recognize that music as the track sound for The Queen's Gambit, very popular show about a young woman and her life in the chess world that was a big hit with Netflix last year. So I had to find that track. Welcome everybody to a very special Irish American Crossroads Oral History Archive event. And this year we're featuring two amazing women, Irish women. We're all amazing actually, but two particularly amazing ones. Elizabeth Shaughnessy, who's a Dubliner originally, and has founded the Berkeley Chess School almost 40 years ago, I believe. Welcome, Elizabeth. And Geraldine Finn, I'm gonna have to read her title. Geraldine Finn works with Twitter as the Senior Director of People Strategy, Operations and Innovation. So welcome, ladies. So we'll get started. And of course, Margaret McPeak, co-director of Crossroads Irish American Festival, is with us. And before we get started, I'd like to dedicate this event to our friend and former colleague, Hilary Flynn, who unfortunately passed away after a battle with cancer in November of last year. So I think there's no more fitting theme and topic than strong Irish and Irish American women to honor Hilary's memory and wish we had her story. And she kind of personifies strength and the female spirit, I suppose. So one more thing before we get started, if I'm not clunking it up, is we just released a promo video for the Oral History Archive 2 days ago. So it's only a minute and a half, I believe. I'm going to share that with you before we get started, and then we're going to talk a little bit with Elizabeth and Geraldine about their beginnings in Ireland, their journey to the US, and what they're up to now. And we've got some nice chat to be had. We have a few questions in already, and we will do some kind of a Q&A at the end. So we're looking at about 90 minutes, 75 to 90. So you're more than welcome to send questions our way via chat. And I believe we're also streaming live on Facebook, according to Margaret. So, and thank you all for being here, especially the ones that are missing this stunningly lovely day in San Francisco. And hope we've got people from Ireland. Hi, this is so exciting that we can, our global reach is so wide now with international audiences. So I'm going to share our video and then we'll get started. Thank you all for attending. All right, start again.
When I came to America, I was so homesick and so lonely here. And then I started meeting some nice Irish people. I met them at the KRB, and my homesickness went away. And I then decided, I was happy then.
A lot of poverty. We had family that died of starvation. She got me a job in Woolworths, and I thought I died and I went to heaven because they put me on the candy counter, and I ate so much sweet stuff that I sickened myself. I asked to be taken out there and they put me onto the cookie counter.
My Uncle Harry, he was near to the city hall, so he'd have a really big happenings up there. The Irish music, had Irish jukebox, like Irish dancing every Sunday. And he brought the Wolf Tones out. It was the first trip to America.
We arranged to meet at Shannon Airport. Nobody went to the airport with me. And my father took me to the bus. And I remember him standing at the bottom of the bus and the biggest tears coming down. I never see you again, which is not true.
We had the Irish football hurling, and we meet out there on Sundays. It was good times, happy times.
Came to America full intention of joining the army and getting over it. You get 10 days leave in the 6 months. So I discovered my sister was out in Eureka, California. She was married out there. Well, I got to Eureka and no problem. They were delighted to have me join and join that National Guard.
I was very, very happy to get to America. I was happy in San Francisco because it was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
right, and once again, that's IrishAmericanCrossroads.org. There's more information about the archive on a page on that and our contact information. So we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for joining me for this half hour, which gives us the opportunity to think about the relevance of Christian theology to the university and to society today. My name is Judith Wolf, and I'm Professor of Philosophical Theology at the
Nice. Okay. Start again. We're off to a great start here, actually. So welcome, Elizabeth. First of all, we're just going to do a quick run through of, tell us a little bit about yourself. And we'll start with your, I think, one of your earliest memories of school. You were an early school starter. Elizabeth started school at the tender age of 3. So please tell us how that happened.
Oh, my mother had a cousin who was a nun, and the nun liked me a lot, and persuaded my mother to send me up to the school in which she was teaching, which was relatively close to our home, but it wasn't the nearest school, but it was relatively close. And so up I went at age 3, and this cousin, Sister Gertrude was her name, would bring me around from classroom to classroom, showing me off. She rewarded me or tempted me always with sweets or candy that was up her big sleeves. And that was very exciting for me because I wasn't allowed candy at home. So it was, I was able to sing at age 3 in tone. And so she had me sing at every classroom I would go to, just showing me off. I, of course, wasn't aware that this wasn't the usual thing at that time, and just did it. And that then obviously I'd be in a classroom at some point and pick up whatever I could pick up at age 3. So that was that was the start of my my education. The result of all this was I ended up at the other end rather young, and so I was too young to go to university, and so my parents sent me to what was called, I guess still is called, a finishing school in Brussels, Belgium, where I essentially continued with music, which I played the piano and sang classes all my life, really. And so
I'm going to back you up there a little bit, Elizabeth. You graduated very young, obviously, because you started at 3.
yeah.
But in that school time, you've a couple of stories that are kind of interesting. And I think the most pertinent one might be how your father had to go and stand up for your desire to have a higher maths, as we say in Ireland, program available to girls. So I think that's a story. And we're talking about 1940s Ireland. And backing up even more, actually, I think it's interesting that your family were housing a Lithuanian family during the war.
Yes, we sheltered a Lithuanian family during the war, which was the first time I saw chess played. I was very young, but that was when I fell in love with chess, because my father and the father of the Lithuanian family used to play chess in our kitchen or breakfast room, I guess it'd be called now. Every day, and I just fell in love with chess at that point. And I was very young, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, and that was so it was through the Jesuits. Of course, my father had a nephew who was a Jesuit, and they found this Lithuanian family. They had lots of families they were trying to be kept in homes, and my mother and father agreed to have this Lithuanian family with us for the duration. He had been Lithuanian ambassador to Germany, but he was Catholic and had fled with his family. And and he was trying to get to the United States. So he was writing all his applications in our house while they were there. We must have been with us for 1.5 years or 2 years before he got the okay to go to the United States.
Okay.
So
your chess beginnings.
My chess beginnings.
Just real quickly, tell us how your father, helped you.
Well, I was lucky enough to be born into a family, a mother and a father who didn't just didn't accept, or they didn't make a big deal about it, but they just didn't accept the regular or accepted idea of that girls should, that girls are sort of their purpose in life is to get married and have children and be happy. They didn't accept that at all. They did not accept it either. It was just, they saw me, he saw, for instance, that I was pretty good at math. And so when I switched schools to go to a boarding school for the secondary education, they didn't have honors math at the school. And he just wouldn't accept that. And the reason was, well, girls aren't any good at math. And he said, well, my daughter is very good at math, and I'd like if you would have honors math. And sure enough, they offered honors math, because schools often do what parents want since they're paying them. And there were 10 girls in the class, and all of us passed honors math at the end in the leaving certificate. So, you know, it was crazy, but that was the thing of the time. And to some extent, it's still true. Girls aren't any good at math. Well, that's who said, you know, and does that persuade girls then to be not any good at math, or they won't be real girls? You know, there's a whole thing involved in that. But I didn't, you know, I just did what I was told to do and did honors math, and it was, but I know, but for him, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something we did a quick run through on Friday with Elizabeth and Geraldine, and we've got a lot of commonality, even though they're different times in Ireland, but a lot of commonality with you know, that kind of matriarchal society that we come from, and the influence of parents and mothers and teachers and nuns. And I guess, you know, they don't say it, but behind every great woman, there's another great woman, I suppose, something like that. So it's interesting to hear the stories of the people who supported you along the way. So, you know, back in 40s, I guess it was 50s Ireland by the time you finally got into college. So you went to finishing school, and
Yeah.
then you went back to Dublin to college, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I do remember to talk about, I do remember Geraldine talked about a nun who was influential to her, which reminded me of a nun who was influential to me. And it was the nun who taught religion in school, and her, again, it was an exceptional person. Her way of teaching literature would come in with the daily newspaper every day, and we would discuss whatever the topics were. I remember well discussing the labor movement and strikes and protests and all of this thing that's current to this day is important to know about. That's what we were taught by this one person. And it was critical thinking. It was getting your mind going. It was better than anything she could have taught us about religion, which we already were indoctrinated in anyway. Right. So that was somebody in my life.
Right. So let's touch a little bit on your life as an architect, which was a pretty amazing thing for a woman in the 50s. I know there's a lot of attendees here who really want to hear more about your life as an Irish chess Olympiad and founder of this amazing chess school. So we will get to that, but first of all, we'll talk about your time as an architect in both Ireland and the US.
Well, yeah, I graduated from University College Dublin, and I went to, the first place I went to was Yugoslavia. Tito was there then, keeping the whole thing together. I had been taught that Tito was bad, it was communism, it wasn't, in fact, it was socialism. But we know now that Tito was able to hold it all together, and God, terrible things have happened since. But anyway, I worked in Yugoslavia with a group of other just graduated students from all over the world, and in building New Belgrade. And that was very interesting. And then after that, I went and worked in London. Then I came back and worked in Dublin for a while. Then I went to the United States for a while. Didn't like it, by the way. Was in Southern California, didn't like it at all. Went back home and thought I'd never go there again, and continued. My father then died, so I stayed home with my mother, stayed in Ireland for years. And And then I left the United States eventually, and of course my skill was architecture. So, well, I won't say I went to the United States eventually, because I've just said I'd never go back. I met the man who became my husband in Ireland, and went over. He persuaded me that Northern California was different from Southern California, and persuaded me to come and try it out, which I did, and so I got a job as an architect here in the Bay Area. And it was interesting to me because I was a qualified architect. I looked for a job as an architect. I got paid as an architect. And yet, almost everywhere I went, or often with interviews even to get a job, I would be asked, well, you will answer the phone and make the tea. And I just, where's the sense of that? Even at the time, I thought, you're paying me architectural wages. You want me to make the tea. You wouldn't ask a man to make the tea, of course, and you wouldn't ask a man to answer the phone. It's just incredible. I declined always.
And I remember, Elizabeth, you said that in our interview that we did a couple of years back. And you said that would never have happened in Ireland, which I thought was
no, they have a better financial sense of their workers. I mean, if they're paying for an architect, they're going to get an architect. They're going to get the qualification, the skills that person is being paid for, which is not making tea. Not that there's anything wrong with making tea and making phone, but it just is so sexist. It's so, women do this, do they? Yes.
You grew up, you worked through a man's world. Architecture and chess are both
yeah.
things.
I didn't plan it that way, but that was where my interests lay. Yeah.
And just before we leave Ireland completely, when did you when was your first competitive chess game? Or
oh gosh, I started to play when I went to university. I played on the chess team in university, and I became Irish women's chess champion in, I think it was 69. It was maybe 70, maybe 69 or 70. But I also played in my first Olympiad from Ireland, and way back then it was all women Olympiad. In Lublin in Poland. I remember we went off to do there. It was one of the last all women's Olympiads. After that, chess Olympiads. After that, it's men and women together, which is much better. But that one was, and that was the last one. That was the first and last one I played in from living in Ireland. I played in 7 chess Olympiads overall, but that was my first in Lublin in Poland. So,
right.
Yeah.
So your chess, the Berkeley Chess School was a happy accident, really. You were working as an architect, you were raising your children, and there was no chess to be found. So apart from, exposing more children to chess, you're also a big advocate for young girls in chess, probably as a result of what you went through growing up. So tell us how the Berkeley Chess School came about, and we'll wrap it up then, and we get Geraldine on to her story, and then we'll be back.
Okay. Well, the Berkeley Chess School started because the elementary school to which my children went was looking for after-school programs for the children, because they wanted the district to provide a late bus for the children who needed some help with their homework, and so they wanted the other children to be occupied. So I thought I'd offer chess because that's the thing I can offer, and I brought up my 5 chess sets and boards expecting 10 kids, and I got 72, and half of those were girls and half of those were boys, and I've never had that ratio in the Berkeley Chess School is now 40 years old. I've never had that ratio of 50-50 with girls and boys again. So whatever the magic was then, well, there weren't any other options then. There wasn't much after school stuff going on then, and it was chess was very popular, and it went from there without any advertising. I've never advertised for students in the sense of going into schools or calling schools and asking if they have us. It's by word of mouth. It has spread now after 40 years to 7,000 kids a year we do. And that was pre-COVID, by the way. COVID has made a huge difference. Obviously, we do it online now and the numbers are much smaller, but hopefully we'll be back again soon to our 7,000 kids a year to teach chess. We also quite recently, well, recently in 2017, we bought a building and we bought it. I mean, we got a mortgage on a building, and in 2018 we moved in. So now we have our wonderful chess center in Berkeley, to which we invite every chess player in the world to come and play in our tournaments once COVID is over, and or your children can take classes. Now you can do it online, of course, if you want to. berkeleychessschool.org, go online and you can sign up your child if you live in Ireland. If you live in Timbuktu, you can play chess with the Berkeley Chess School and our kids. So that's more or less in a nutshell what happens. We're still trying to raise money to install a lift at the Berkeley Chess School so that it's accessible to disabled people, which of course is the law, and we're struggling to do that. So anybody who has some extra cash lying around, it would be great. berkeleychessschool.org, donate button, you're done.
Good. You're still working it, Elizabeth, for the
Oh yes, I love it. I love it.
Okay,
my job description has changed from being from teaching to running the program.
Okay, well, we'll be back to talk more about you and chess. We can't leave Geraldine sitting here looking into space. So.
I messaged there. I'd listen to Elizabeth all day, so take your time. There's no hurry.
Welcome, Geraldine, and thank you for agreeing. First of all, have your story be part of the new generation collection of stories in the Irish Oral History Archive, which we've now found a cute name for, Beishgale, we're calling it. It's a bit of a mouthful to say the Crossroads Irish American Oral History Project of the San Francisco Bay Area, so we're now calling it Beishgale. And I'm sure most of our attendees know what scale is. It's story in Irish, and we're in the Bay, so how cute is that? So welcome, Geraldine. Farm girl, from farm to Twitter, from farm to table.
Natural progression.
Tell us a bit about your early days, and don't forget to mention your early journey to England as well. Like, I think that's part of the Irish story. Your parents, I think, had no option but to go to the UK before you were born. So take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Minnie, for having me. And I mean it, Elizabeth, I would literally sit and listen to you all day. So I'll fly through this quickly so we can get back to the good stuff with Elizabeth. I'm from Northeast Galway. Grew up from a dairy farming background. I was just firstborn, the eldest. We moved to England when I was just 6 or 8 weeks old. We moved to Manchester in Ireland. My parents were very young. My mum was 15 when they met. They got married at 19, and me at 20, and off they went to Manchester to try and make a future for themselves, I suppose. I was in Manchester till I was maybe 5, I was kidding last week. It was funny coming home at 5 and having a very strong North Manchester accent, which I was happy in time to lose, I won't lie. But yeah, we were in Ireland for 5 years, and I think people are like, well, do you remember anything from that? And I do. It was actually a very important experience. The Irish community, like I said, mum and dad were very young. My dad was a good footballer, and he played for Usheen's and was the football club. My earliest memories are get-togethers in the house and sing-songs and people showing up at the weekend. Mum and dad built a house not that long after they got there, and having people showing up to help do that. Dad worked in construction, and it was just that Irish community was just rock solid, and a very, very special group of people. And I was actually talking to my mum about it yesterday, and I was just remembering all the names. Like, those people became constants in my whole life and still are. The Connors brothers, Peter and Seamus, they're from Carlow. Seamus has passed away, God love him. Peter's still a huge part of our lives. All of those people from Tipperary, Donegal, Galway, Carlow, all over Ireland have been friends to our family in a very meaningful way all the way through life. And I always tell a funny story. When I was thinking about moving here 4 years ago, I didn't know how my mom and dad think about it. And I told my dad, and I thought he'd be like, you know, where are you going? Would you stay here? Like, and he turned around, he said, would you go and grab the opportunity with two hands? Didn't I meet the best of Irish people outside of Ireland, and you'll have a great time. So yeah, formative few years in Manchester, and moved back to Galway to the dairy farm at 5.
Right. So you got an early taste of a dual identity almost, you know, or
Yeah.
how you were seen as a returning person with a little bit of an accent, I'm sure, at that age. Not
Yeah.
probably by the age of 5, but so you had a sense of having an elsewhere place as well.
Yeah. Well, it normalized being away from home very early for me. I think it had a role in my interest in travel and being away after that. I didn't fear it because it was kind of where I started, you know. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned during your interview, which was in the middle of the pandemic, that your sense of yourself is shaken since you haven't been able to set foot back in Ireland and get a bit of grounding that you need every time you visit there. Not that you necessarily want to go back there right now, but it's something that's affecting you strongly during this.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've always been away from home. Like 2 summers from our leaving cert, I was working in Claremorris, staying with the family. I just always wanted to be gone, trying things. But I think that confidence comes from knowing you have such a strong base and an anchor. And I'm very lucky. Like I said, my generation is one that hasn't had to give up everything to experience something else. I travel home an awful lot. And Irish culture and music and all that stuff is really important to me. But yeah, I am. And me and a lot of my friends who are away have talked about this in the last year or so. I'm feeling unanchored and a little off center, not having been back and surrounded by those things, you know, which, you know, we're so privileged to have been flying home multiple times a year. And it's interesting, though, it also helps you appreciate what others went through. In a very different way of not being able to travel and not knowing when. So yeah, it's been a weird one. I can't wait for the first trip back, that's for sure.
So we move back again to your earlier days. We want to hear a little bit about the farm, and but also about the people who influenced you. I mean, we were talking about that the other day. The women in your life, and a teacher, a particular teacher that opened a few doors for you.
Yeah, I will say, and it's funny, I've been reflecting on this even since we talked the other day. Like, strong women, I'm so blessed. They have literally influenced every step of my life. So I'm very, very lucky. In terms of the farm life, I'm sure I didn't appreciate it fully at the time, and I'm sure my dad would attest to that as well. But it really was idyllic, you know. Summers in Ireland, as a kid, you can get up, eat your breakfast, do the odd job on the farm, and you were gone then playing with your friends down the fields. And it was really an idyllic upbringing when I think about it. But there were a couple of big influences in my life. Both my grannies were brilliant women altogether, but my maternal grandmother really was a woman ahead of her time. She was an absolute matriarch, stunning singer, but just had this. And it resonates so much with me, Elizabeth, when you say it's not like anyone ever made a big deal out of it. And it wasn't a big deal. Just there was an innate questioning of roles. And sure, if there was an opportunity, why wouldn't you go for it? And if there's something you're interested, why not pursue it? But I do remember her, when I got into college, kind of sitting me down and saying, you know, Geraldine, I was awful lucky, you know. You and my granddad and your granddad and me were very lucky. We married out of love. She used to get great humor out of telling people she was a few years older than my granddad, which obviously didn't happen too often back then. And she used to get a great kick out of that. And I remember her telling me, you know, I was lucky. But remember, in my day, you had to marry a man who lived within cycling distance of you. And it just floored me. It just floored me. And her message was, get out and say, grab every opportunity and see what you can and do what you can. Isn't it amazing, really, the way opportunity and what's open to women had evolved in 2 generations of our family. So Granny was definitely a big influence. As was my mother. My mom had won scholarships to the Gaeltacht, had done drama, stunning. You know, she's just the best. She's the most beautiful singer altogether. And yeah, there was just this innate, or whatever you want to do, you know, which was great. But the teacher you're talking about, and if anyone from home is listening, they'll be laughing. So I had a great teacher in national school called Mary Mullen. And I mean, some of it was hilarious. You know, if you did well in your test that day, like she'd give you the money to go down to the shop and buy her cigarettes. Like there were lots of strange things about school at that time. But on the other side of it, she drilled Irish culture and music, dance, singing into us with great enthusiasm, I'll say, and at times threat. But yeah, every week she would have us clear the room and teach us set dancing and music on various instruments and singing. And I think that's where my first love of Irish, I hadn't experienced it beyond hearing my granny or mum sing at the odd party at home. And it just really had a huge impact. She was also very interesting. She taught us to question things, you know.
Nationalist leaning, right?
She did, and you know, you'd read history, and it was one thing, but she was always very eager to overlay it with local context and relevance. So, like, there'd be evenings and weekends where we would have project work, and you know, you'd be walking off miles on your own with a sheet of paper and some chalk, doing chalk rubbings of memorial tombstones to people that died in you know, local Republican efforts and whatnot, or nationalist. And she was just always very eager for us to question what we were reading in history. And yeah, I think she was the first person to really make me try to critically think about things. But it was certainly an interesting education. I don't think you'd see much of that going on now.
Right. Yeah. And then you went on to the University of Limerick. And some of your stories, you don't acknowledge how adventurous and brave you are, but you stuck your neck out a few times to move into the direction you're in now.
Well, thank you. I don't know. Yeah, I probably wouldn't put them quite like that. I would say I was just lucky. I never had anyone tell me I couldn't do anything. So sure, why would I think otherwise? You know, so you'd always chance your arm at things. And I was always one for saying what I thought, if only like to ask and learn, if nothing else, you know. I know we talked about it. The second influential teacher was the one who in secondary school who really pushed me to go to university, and she was probably very much she was great pushing me at things like that, and just again teaching us to question. I told that story of her. Her name was Sister Maura. And I was really strong at biology and things like that. So she was pushing me to go to college. But I remember in religion, one day, two instances. The first being somebody, you know, telling us about as a girl, I came from the rib of whomever, and me putting my hand up saying, actually, sister, are you familiar with Darwin's theory of evolution? I remember getting in quite a bit of trouble about that. Luckily, Sister Moore was my second religion teacher, and she had she was just so progressive and, you know, just taught a different doctrine and was always about questioning. And I remember then when I went to college, did a module in entrepreneurship, and there was a relatively well-known entrepreneur that lived not far from us, and I got my dad to find out his number, and I rang him and said, here, I have to do a project, can I come and interview you? Sure, he said yes, and did the interview, and I got an A whatever in the thing, and bold as brass, got it back, made a photocopy, sent it to him in the post, and said, any chance of a summer job? And a bit bold in retrospect, but there you go.
Yeah, and you two things you said in your interview that kind of changed your life. One was your visit to New York, and the second, I think, was Dublin. your time in Dublin. So, or maybe that was really when you took a bit of a change in course when you were in Dublin. But just a little bit about your first experience in America.
Yeah, so I was awful lucky. I was doing French in university, and I had done that entrepreneurship module, and I had done one in HR, which is what I work in now. And I went straight to the offices at times that I do not want to do Erasmus. I want to go to America, and I want to do an internship in HR. And they were looking at me like I had 10 heads. And I was just like, I will show up every day till you let me get an interview for a HR job. But just give me one shot with one company. I bet you it'll be grand. Like I'll talk my way into it kind of. And fair play, they gave me an interview, and I got a job with an internship in the US in '98 with a company called New York Life Insurance. And it was, I equate what I learned in that year to all of my studies. Like it was just incredible. And while my parents, I would say, and my family and, powerful figures in life, very much had that approach of, do whatever you want. New York kind of made me believe I could have, and there was a ton of stuff that I could go for and think about, and just horizons opened up in such an incredible way. And I was very lucky. I had played football a lot at home locally. And I remember we'd been playing, before I went on to New York, we'd been playing at a tournament, and I met some girls who played for County Cavan in New York. And I'd said I was heading over, and they're like, sure, come and play with us. So, and when I got to New York, and I really didn't have a clue in retrospect, but I had that base, and I got to play football, and there was a great group of supportive people. But then I was working in Manhattan, and it was just this beautiful, like, security of knowing these people where I knew nobody else except for the one or two friends from college. And then this opportunity from that conference to explore just the most incredible place and just think differently about what could be in life,
Right. And the Irish community supported you there, like they had parents in the UK, I guess, when you were.
Oh yeah, I had the best of times. I really had the best of both worlds. I didn't drink at all till later, and I would go up and play football or train at Van Cortlandt Park, and then I'd get on the one train and go all the way down to Washington Square. And on a Sunday afternoon, if we had a game Sunday, I'd go down then and sit in the corner and listen to like famous jazz musicians come in and just like tear it up in the park. And it was just the most incredible existence, quite frankly. Yeah, very lucky.
The world had opened up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sports was strong in your life, and music will. For those of us who can stick around, we're going to have the pleasure of listening to a little song.
I wouldn't be overselling it now,
Catherine. So tell us a little bit about your life in music, and then we will probably get moving on to a little bit of back and forth.
Great. Yeah, sure. Look, in our houses, in our family, there's a lot of great singers, and we'd have a lot of parties, and everyone would be singing. But I just kind of fell into it. I was in a pub, and a friend had just come home from Australia, and he knew. Anyway, long story short, they ended up singing one song, which is entirely out of character, and the musicians there were like, "Hey, we're starting a band. Will you sing with us?" And I thought this was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. I knew literally 2 songs in the work. And yeah, so we started a band called Rera out of Tuam. They're really a really well-known family musicians, the Donlans. Eilish Tuttle, their mom, was very well known. I think she's the best-selling Irish traditional record for years and years and years, and a brilliant musician and a brilliant woman. But yeah, we just started playing gigs in Tuam, and we had great fun, and we had lots of success, surprisingly. The Saw Doctors obviously are from Tuam, and they were just brilliant to us. They'd come in and join in sessions, and stop, we had the best of times. So yeah, from there then we opened for the Saw Doctors a couple of times, and I sang with them a few different places. In Manchester, I remember one Patrick's Day, which was quite the experience. And we got to tour and do festivals all over the place. Finland and Germany and France and Amsterdam, things like that. So yeah, it was just great. Just such a brilliant way to meet brilliant people and connect with Irish and non-Irish all over the world, because they really do love traditional music. So yeah, it was great.
Nice. Okay, we'll be back to you to talk about tech, the world of tech, the world of Twitter, Twitter in Dublin, Twitter in San Francisco. We're going to go back to Elizabeth. There's a couple of questions. I'll kick off with one from Kenny Somerville. Hi, Kenny. Speaking of musicians, it's one of our local stalwarts. I'm very interested in Elizabeth's experience representing Ireland in Olympiads, especially before the fall of the USSR. So what was it? He wonders what it was like for you to travel from Ireland, which was not really a chess powerhouse, I suppose, in that time, to somewhere, to the USSR, which was, to represent Ireland. So you've loads of questions, Kenny. We'll start with that one.
Yeah, okay, well, I had traveled a lot anyway myself, all over the world really, and so traveling wasn't a big deal. I realized I would be going into the USSR, and wondered about that. In Ireland at the time, we were really, it was very, it's much like parts of the United States are now, like communism. It's the devil, and so I went with that sort of idea, is except that I had been to Yugoslavia, so I knew that communism wasn't the devil, but nonetheless it was, we arrived. I had no trepidation at all about going, but we arrived, and it was much like, it was described much like I've seen it, armed soldiers everywhere, no smiles, no friendship, no warmth at the border going through. It was really made to feel frightening. That, you sort of felt, well, maybe they were right. Maybe they'll keep me here forever, sort of thing, and put me in prison and indoctrinate me in something else. That was the whole feeling. I was too cocky and too stupid probably to take any of that very seriously.
What about the game itself? The differences in
at that time it was all women, but there were lots of men around who were really grandmasters and so on. And I learned an awful lot at that Olympiad. The Irish team did very poorly as usual, but we won in the odd game. But what was interesting to me was to watch the women from the USSR, or the top groups. We as an Irish team were all into having fun, having parties, staying up half the night. I didn't drink at the time, but drinking was a heavy part of it. And that was what we were into. Well, I tell you, the top teams weren't like that at all, but they were very serious. Well, they still are to this day. But I remember when you'd have an adjourned game, in those days, we adjourned games. And when you'd have an adjourned game, we would go over with our coach, and we would spend half the night up trying to go over what if he moves here or she moves here, then what do we do? And you should proceed in this way and that way and the other way. But the teams of the USSR were playing a lot of ping pong, doing a lot of jogging around the area, doing a lot of physical exercises, and the team went to bed at a regular hour and got up refreshed because they had professionals up all night analyzing their game for them. So they would get up an hour or two earlier before the game, and the professionals, their coaches, would go over all the possible thing that we had to try and find out ourselves by staying up all night. So that was unfair. They were really professional. We were not. The whole West, not just Ireland, the whole West. They earned money at it. We didn't. It's supposed to be amateur, but it really wasn't. But what I really came away with was, these people are excellent chess players. They're exercising physically. That's how they do it. they're able to keep these games in those days were 5 hours long, and then you'd have an adjournment, maybe another 2 hours, and you needed a lot of stamina, mental stamina, physical stamina to do this. We in the West were just not able for it, and they were. And that was a lesson. I came home to Ireland, and I started in a gym, and I started to exercise, and I won the Irish Women's Chess Championship that year. It was stamina. And I must say that I realized that today, at my age today, stamina is what is missing for me to keep up the level of chess I would like to, or that I had before. You just don't have it at 83. You just don't have it. But you can still play chess, a halfway decent chess game, and you can play quicker time controls than the slower ones. But so it's very important. I think if you want to become successful at anything, it's very important to understand that the mind and the body are one, and that you can't excel at something in your mind unless you have a fit body to go along with it. So that's what I learned in Lublin, and we had a good time.
So, well, you're so vibrant and youthful and sharp. Do you attribute this to your continuation of the game and keeping your mind engaged? Is it something you'd...
Yeah, a large part of it is genes. Let there be no doubt about that. There's a large part is something you can do nothing about. But my mother used to say, God helps those who help themselves. And I believe in that. And so I think exercise over the years, physical exercise over the years, I still exercise. I'm not into sports like Geraldine is or was, but I exercise every day. I think that's important. And I do think keeping your mind, that chess will keep you alert. So I think it's very important for older people. But by that, you see, I don't mean just casually playing a game. That won't help. It's got to be the sort of playing chess where you think, where you try to think 2-3 moves ahead, what would happen. That's making your mind work. That's what will keep your mind fresh, in my opinion. And, but as I say, a lot of it's genes too.
Right. And so you must have been pretty happy to see something like the Queen's Gambit become such a popular show. I don't know what the numbers are. It was one of the most.
Yeah, it was the best. Yeah.
And I remember during the interview you were saying that chess was never a very sexy, if you like, game, and it has become a little bit more popular of late. But did you get a lot of signups after they all, and her name was Beth, by the way, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, we have had an increased interest, and we've had especially increased interest in women and girls. Nothing like to the extent I want to see, but yes, we have. That movie brought back a lot of things to me. Going to tournaments as a woman, being the only woman in the whole room, how you're treated as a woman, the patriarchy, the how they patronize you really is even more offensive than when they're rude to you. But something happens. Well, women are different, so there's no doubting about that. Women are different from men, and so you're going to be treated in one way or another. I would prefer someone to be rude than to be patronizing. Patronizing really gets to me. But I still see it to this day. I have this chess center now, and a woman walks in, and the weakest chess player in the room would go up and offer her to teach her how to play chess with no hesitancy whatsoever. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
And what communities? So you serve, you said, I think up to 8,000 Bay Area children?
7,000 kids roughly a year, pre-COVID. Yeah.
So under the age of 18 or something like that. Is that right? Is it?
Yeah. Yes, school children.
And what communities participate more? I think I might know the answer, but let us know what the breakdown of.
Well, more male than female. We're working very hard to rectify that, and the Queen's Gambit certainly helps. But the Asian community, Indian, it started, chess was created in India or China. Nobody can quite agree on which, but both of those ethnicities are really into chess big time.
Both girls and boys.
Especially boys.
Why do you think? What are the challenges for girls with this game that you've seen over your? 40
Yeah,
years.
to stick with it, girls are just as competitive as boys, but they show it in a different way. I believe, though times have changed and times in chess are changing with them too, that girls traditionally, as young people, played with dolls and played with houses and played that sort of game. It was not a win-lose. They didn't play win-lose games. Boys did from the moment they were born. And so when it comes to a thing like chess, the girls, when they lose, their thing is, oh, it's a boring game, I'm quitting. The truth is they're hurt by losing. Boys are hurt by losing too, but their attitude is, I'll get you next time. So I think, we've got to change a lot more. You can't just wave a magic wand and say, oh, come on, girls, play chess. You've got to think it through and what would get them to play. I think by nature, women are more sociable than men. I do think that's natural as opposed to being created by the society. Or that's what I've come to conclude, having watched it with girls and women over the years in chess. So I know when I was in the chess club in Ireland, in the university club, I persuaded all my women friends to come play chess. So it was a sort of a mixed thing. And it was so popular with both the men and the women, because I find a lot of men who play chess aren't good socially. And so if it's sort of created for them, they're delighted. They're delighted. But so there's lots of, it's not a simple question.
Right. And did you have obstacles or challenges getting programs into schools? How was it? Because yours was the first, before the chess school, you started in your children's school, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so do you want to tell us how, what that was like? Because this really was an unexpected trajectory in your life to be.
Yes, totally. It started at Oxford School, 72 kids. Word got around the Berkeley schools. I was asked to do it. I was volunteering at the time, of course. I was asked to do it. I did it in 5 days a week, but there was a bigger demand. So I went to the chess club and said, would anybody be willing to teach chess in schools? And they said, yes, if you pay us. And so I thought, okay. And then I went to the central PTA and I said, could you fund money for chess in the schools? And they said, no, but we'd pay for our own children. So what I took out of that was, okay, I'll charge so I can pay the teachers. And I'll charge a little more so those who can't afford to pay can come anyway. And it was, I established the Berkeley Chess School with the idea that no child will ever be turned away because they can't pay. I also, I feel strongly about reaching out to all communities with chess, and we do outreach to Title I schools. Title I are the schools where the children are most of the children have free lunches. So we go out to Title I schools in the Bay Area, in Richmond, Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley, and teach those children during the school day. We raise money to do that. They don't have to pay for that, and it's very important. Some of those schools are the kids don't even have PE. They've really nothing. And I can tell you how they look forward to the chess, and the good it's doing them is phenomenal. And I've been watching this over the years. It's quite amazing what that so-called game, can do for a child's mind.
Do you have any particular stories of an individual you've seen some,
Oh, well, I remember in Richmond, there were two brothers who were demons, just giving the teacher a hard time, always sitting at the back, always snickering, always doing everything wrong, the teacher's nightmare. And they started to play chess with us. And as you often find with these children who are problem children, they're very smart. So they started to play chess. They got into chess. They started to take take listening to the teacher seriously. And of course, that's all you need to do to learn, is listen to your teacher. If you don't listen to your teacher, you can't learn. If you listen to your teacher, you'll pick something up. And so the teachers were just astonished that these two kids who were just problems and going nowhere in life suddenly were listening to their teachers, were doing well in school, and graduating. So that's one couple of kids I remember who were so bad. And I do remember going into another school in Oakland. My son teaches, and he's very good, and he was teaching in this school, but he for the first time ever, and maybe the first time ever even since then, came to me and said, I can't handle this class. It's like the kids, there were a lot of crack baby type kids there, and they'd get up in the middle of class and kick the wall or scream, or it was just a very difficult scene. So I got a woman teacher to go in and help him out. So there were two of them doing it. And I went back a while later, and all of those children were sitting on the floor, riveted to the chess demonstration board where he was teaching, and not a peep out of them, and all paying attention. That's chess. It's a good teacher too, but it's chess. Chess gets the mind. If it gets the mind, you have them. And those children will have some sort of a future in a life that wasn't offered to them before that.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. There's also the child who came from a poor neighborhood, got into a very fancy school because he won the state championship, and went from there to university to study philosophy. There's
back to the power of teaching. I think we have a couple of teachers attending this, and super. Geraldine, we'll go back to you to catch up with your life now that you're a tech girl in Dublin, and I'd like to know a little bit about your experience working for a very large tech company in the very early days of a very large tech company, in Dublin as opposed to San Francisco, or in Ireland as opposed to the US, if there is a difference that you can talk about.
I don't know that there's a big difference. I've worked in tech for a long time. I worked for a serial entrepreneur out of Galway very early on, e-commerce, and it was fairly new, on pan-European broadband systems, mobile virtual network operators, things that were, kind of niche, I guess, at the time. I worked for an incredible Sri Lankan gentleman, Ramal Pereira, on a mobile payments technology platform. I always say we were just a bit early because that's what Square and Stripe and all those companies do now. We did that for years. It was amazing. And grew that from, very small to reasonably large, and then sold on. I ran a freight brokerage company, not a very female dominated industry, let's just say that, and an online advertising company. Like, they were all tech companies, just in different industries.
Right.
So I would say Twitter, I worked for a company called ServiceSource before that, two very big San Francisco headquartered tech companies. But I mean, the fundamentals are the same, when I was young, I said, I'll run a company at some point in my life, and that, that'll be success. And I was very lucky I got to run a company at 30. And since then, it's really been about a bit of an experiment. Like, if you put the fundamentals of treating people well at the heart of what you do, can you be successful and create value both in the experience they have and for the company, irrespective of the industry? And that's kind of what it's been like. I think what's great.
You had to make the tea.
Only for myself, or those that I wanted to. I will say, look, things have definitely changed in my lifetime. I know I said this to you both when we were talking before, but like, I'm innately aware of the privilege I have and benefit from being born at the time I was. From my granny saying that, to like free third level education coming in at the right time in Ireland for me. Like, the privilege I have, that the options that were open to me, like, So I don't want to, I want to make, that's forefront for me. But were things worse? Are things better? Most certainly. Elizabeth and I, we were talking on Friday, I was saying the equivalent to making the tea is, will you take the notes in a meeting? Now, that's not something that happens at Twitter. And I will say we're very lucky. Inclusion and diversity, I've never been at a company where it's at the forefront to the same degree. And that's very important to me working in HR, of course. So I'm lucky where I work, I'm lucky the experience I have. But over the years, have I experienced loads of daft stuff? Of course. I think how you choose to react to that is how you deal with it. I would be one for saying, thank you, but no thank you. And we won't be doing that, and we'll suggest an alternative. And then you move on and hope that people learn from it. But you have influence over your experience there. Again, that's massive privilege. And that wouldn't always have been the case. But yeah, I think tea making equivalents, but thankfully to a far lesser degree. And I think a lot of it is
no differences in Dublin or San Francisco in that department.
No,
I just realized the time, and we're gonna invite Margaret McPeak back. She's this is a good historic show or event. Margaret is going for her second COVID vaccination in about half an hour, so she's going to have to cut out a little early. But I think she might have a couple of bit of feedback or a couple of questions, Margaret. And I just want to personally say, Margaret, I think what you do is amazing. I'm so happy you and Hilary started this oral history archive. I think it's a really important thing. We're sitting on a wealth of stories, and it's just one of my favorite things to do. And I just want to thank you for that.
Well, Catherine, thank you for all of the dedication and skill and energy you've brought to the archive in recent years. It's really been moving forward because of you. That's not an overstatement. And this new video I think, is really exciting and portends good things, I think. So it's wonderful to listen to both of you, Elizabeth and Geraldine. And one question I have, just looking in from the perspective of the archive as a whole, is thinking about how you see yourself in relationship to Ireland, or in terms of identity. And I'm wondering how you identify yourself as Irish, as American, as Irish American. What role does identity play in how you see yourself?
Okay, Elizabeth, take it away.
Okay, well, I see myself as Irish American. I am Irish without any shadow of a doubt. I was raised there, I was formed there, all my years of formation. I left there in my early 30s for another life. So it's, I definitely see myself as Irish American, not Irish and not American. I see myself as being hugely privileged to have the best of both worlds. I think there's a lot of good to be said for both countries. It occurred to me as we were talking that I guess it was Geraldine mentioned that when she went to New York, it was a can-do atmosphere there. America is a can-do place. It's apart from the enormous number of people here, which give opportunities that are not available to a country with a smaller population. The attitude of the people always is, I can do it, it can be done. That is so American, and it is not necessarily Irish. It certainly wasn't the Ireland I grew up in. Maybe it's the Ireland today, though I go there and visit quite a bit, and I've friends and family and their children and their children's children. So I see today, but I'm not living in it. But it wasn't in my day. It was much more repressive type of place to be. So it was great. I'm a can-do sort of person. So it was a great release for me to come to somewhere where it could happen. And the Berkeley Chess School happened because I can do, and everyone else can do. And it's great. So So that's in answer to your question. I think I see myself as definitely Irish, but Irish American, and very happy, privileged of both.
And your name, you know, you personify it, but your name, if we have a couple of minutes for you just to briefly tell people how you met you were an O'Shaughnessy, as we pronounce it in
Yes.
Ireland.
Yes.
And your husband was a wandering, traveling Shaughnessy from American tourist, I guess. So
yeah.
So that's
So he was a tourist, and as was the way with Americans, and we all look down our noses on this, of course, looking up his past. And most Irish people don't need to look up their past; they're very aware of it. But he was looking up his past anyway, and by coincidence, he came across me. He was looking up people in the phone book to who he could talk with, and anyway he came across me, and the story goes that I said, forget about your past, I'm your future. So however, I knew him for 4 days in Ireland, 4 days, and I went my way. I went to play chess in England, and he went his way. He went back to the United States, and then he started to write to me.
And excuse me for interrupting you, but I remember in your story that you were also involved in theatre and whatnot in Dublin, but you were dating one of the Clancy brothers at that time, I think.
It was one of the brothers who.
So you were in that. You were in the art music scene.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember at the World's Fair in New York, I sang at the House of Good Taste. It was a man called John, the only millionaire we had at the time, a man called John Byrne, had this House of Good Taste, and I was invited to go sing and play my guitar at it, Irish songs, of course. So, but I wasn't a great singer or a great guitar player or anything like you, Geraldine. But I did. I was paid for it. Was very happy to get some money.
Yeah.
But so, and I did some acting. Yeah, I was acting all through college. That was fun. I liked that too. Yeah.
So Margaret, to follow up on your question, we have Lisa Collins who's attending, saying she grew up in Ireland, emigrated to London and then the US, and although she identifies as Irish, at times she's aware that she's now American too, and it's a strange feeling of belonging to both and neither. I think we can all identify with that. We can all agree that, you know, it is both and neither sometimes. And depending on the day and depending on who the president is and how proud you want to be of your country or whatever's happening, things change. But Geraldine, do you want to speak a bit to that?
Sure. I think who knows how it'll evolve over the years, but I'm 4 years in San Francisco now. I've lived in England a few times in my life and traveled a lot, but I identify as Irish. There isn't the Irish American, Irish Anglo piece at all. But I do think that's probably a function of time and proximity and all those things. And it goes back to what we had discussed and mentioned earlier. Just that being away, but having access to home so regularly, so unencumbered in terms of going home when I need to or want to. That keeps me very close and very centered. But the other side of that is feeling a little unanchored or untethered, I guess, a little bit now, given it's been whatever, nearly 18 months or so. But yeah, Irish for sure. And it's a really important part of me. It's a really important part of who I am.
Yeah. And it's good this new generation that we're doing the histories of have more access to Ireland, and the world is a smaller place. Mm-hmm. So you didn't go forever when you got on that bus. You weren't gone forever. So and Elizabeth, I know you spend you would like to spend more of your time in Ireland, but you still have a house there, and you still spend summers there. And and I think, you know, I think when you have family here, you know, I've got an Irish American son. So then that changes things a little bit when you
maybe you buy in a bit more.
You become a little more Irish American when you
have
an Irish American family, I guess. But we're all mixed up though, for sure, Margaret.
Yeah. I do. I mean, I never realized how important that summers in Ireland was to me until I couldn't have them because of COVID. And I really feel the same as you, Geraldine. You're like a great loss. I can't wait for be able to go back And again, and I didn't realize that. I just took it for granted. I guess I just go there in the summer, and the rest of your here. And I really do miss that summer I missed. And I guess maybe I'll be missing this one too. I don't know how things are going to go.
Yeah.
It's remarkable to me how things have changed, even from my first trip in 98. Even then, that was going for, I don't know, 10 months or something. You weren't going home, or you weren't likely to see anybody. But, like email was not very common. You were buying phone cards to ring home, versus the experience now and the role technology plays in keeping you a bit closer to home. It's like, even in my two distinct experiences of living in the US, the difference is just incredible. And I do think we're very lucky. It's made this a little more tolerable than it might otherwise have been,
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Yeah.
So Margaret, have you anything else you'd like to say before you shoot off for your jab? And good luck with that, by the way.
Thank you. I can't wait. I guess, just to engage with a slightly different topic that both of you have touched on is, what would you say are the most important changes in Irish society in the last 20 years that have made more opportunities available for women?
Huge. From me now, I left in 1970. So it hasn't been the last 20 years, it's been much longer than that. And the differences are huge. We didn't have third level free education in those days. Women, I mean, it's just night and day. The freedom that women have now. A lot of my friends' daughters have children, they're not married, and that's absolutely fine. Well, we know about the laundries. I mean, that was, it's just chalk and cheese. It's totally different. And my God, for the better. Yes, for the better. Yeah.
When you were talking earlier, Elizabeth, about, the can-do attitude here. And I think that's what's changed the most for me. And I do think there's something institutional about that. So like, I'm, again, just a privilege, but like access to third level education that was free. You think about what's happened institutionally, whether that's access to divorce, the marriage referendum, the Health Act in 2018, like I do think those things are incredibly important for a transition from a you can't to you can. And I know we talked about this when we met Catherine. Ireland is not perfect by a long shot. But if you think about exactly, I see Lisa's comment there about the social acceptance of women drinking out of a pint. My granny wasn't able to go into a pub. Like I have friends whose mothers gave up their work, mothers who had a better paying job than the man that they married, and gave it up in matrimony to have a family because they weren't allowed to stay in the civil service. That's all happened like in my extended lifetime. That's insane. Sure, if someone suggested that to me now, they'd actually be in legal trouble. Like it's insane. So it has gone from a you cannot, and it being quite an institutional enforced you cannot, to a very, very different place now. Yes, with its own challenges, but I just think it's incredible. What's happened in Ireland is a model, in my eyes, to what can happen.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. You don't really realize how you realize to some extent, but not full extent, how women were kept down so much. I mean, we've a long way to go, admittedly, but man, they were kept down so much, and that no longer is the case. It's just I'm so happy every time I go home. It's a totally different. Women are free. They weren't free in my day. They weren't. You left.
My God.
Well answered, both of you. So Geraldine really wants to sing us a little song to round it out. So I'm looking at the chat column to see if we've got any more questions, and if there's anything I missed, perhaps if anyone's interested, they could repose their questions. But while we're thinking, Geraldine, you might honor us with.
I'm mortified and I will apologize in advance, but there we go. No pressure with Elizabeth here, and she pitch perfect from age 3, Lord God. We'll see. I'll do something. I'll do Paddy's Green Shamrock Shore. I would normally probably do something jazzier and stuff, but we'll stick with an Irish theme. I hope that's okay. I'll do a shortened version of it. I have no idea how this audio will be, so I'll be watching your 4 faces for a hint if it's going tragically wrong, and I will appropriately stop. Is that okay? Okay. From Derry Quay, we sailed away on the 23rd of May. And we were boarded by a pleasant crew bound for America. Fresh water there we did take on 5,000 gallons or more, in case we'd run short going to New York, far away from the Shamrock Shore. We sailed 3 days and we were all seasick. Not a man on board was free. And we were each confined unto our bones, with no one to care for me. No father dear, no mother kind, to hold up my head when 'twas sore. Which made me think more on the lassie I left on Paddy's Green Shamrock Shore. We safely reached the other side in 23 days. And we were taken as passengers by a man, and led round in 6 different ways. We each of us drank on parting glass, in case we might never meet more. And we drank a health to old Ireland and Paddy's Green Shamrock Shore. So fare thee well, sweet Liza dear, and likewise to Derry town. And twice farewell to me comrade boys, who dwell on that sainted ground. And if fortune it ever should favor me, or I to have money in store, I'll come back and I'll wed the wee lassie I left on Paddy's Green Shamrock Shore.
Fabulous.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Good for you.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Geraldine. Wow, you killed it. We can't wait till we can do this in person, you know, with the
Yes.
So I think we're going to wrap it up. I don't see any more. Oh yeah, so Kenny already, do you have Elizabeth, a favorite chess book that you'd recommend?
Oh, do I have a favorite chess book? Obviously not, since I'm hesitating about which of the many chess books I should recommend. You know, it depends what level of chess you're at, but for a beginner, Reuben Fine wrote a great book called Chess the Easy Way. And a beginner to maybe 1400 rating is, that's a book I would recommend. Reuben Fine's Chess the Easy Way.
Okay, it's good to write it in there. Reuben Fine, okay.
Yeah, I would certainly recommend against any opening books. Any books on openings, you can get buried alive in opening books. Don't do that.
Right. So somebody said it's now socially acceptable for women to drink out of a pint glass in Ireland. I remember it wasn't one time. Anyway, there's a bit of chat, but
you wouldn't be served a pint. I used to drink beer, and you couldn't get a pint. You could get 2 half pints, but you couldn't get a pint if you're a woman. And of course, they charge more. Yeah.
And then you had to sit in a different part of the bar as well until the 6, whenever. Yeah, we've been hard done by, but I think, we've prevailed. So
Yes. Yes. Strong Irish.
I think, well, first of all, I want to thank the panelists. And I think it's hard to do this kind of thing without a Zoom, without other faces. So we hope there's someone out there, because we can only see ourselves. I think we had quite a few signups. So hopefully people have not left or fallen asleep or anything, and especially enjoyed that last treat. Geraldine, thank you so much for that beautiful, beautiful song. I'm going to finish it up with
Somebody wrote Gura Mahagat to you.
Oh, Gura Mahagat, yeah, thank you. I'll round us out again with that video that we just had made, and that has the information at the end of it on how to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from anyone who's interested in becoming participant in the archive, or who knows of anybody whose story would. Everybody has a great story, and then I repeatedly get people telling me that I don't have anything to say, I don't have a story, but I've done over 100 interviews, and nobody doesn't have a great story. So and then of course, if anybody has extra money hanging around, they can help us out. They can help out the Berkeley Chess School. But we also want a quick shout out to the Irish Consulate here in San Francisco, and the availability of the Immigrant Support Program, which is financially backed the archive to date too. So big shout out for the Irish Consul, Robert O'Driscoll, and Michael Tracy, are the current consul and vice consul that may or may not be on here. Hello if you are, and thank you again for helping us do this. And that's it. So I'm going to see if I can share the screen without messing up. And
thank you, Catherine, for putting this event together and leading us through this great conversation today. It's been wonderful. So thank you.
And hopefully we'll have many more.
Absolutely.
So, okay, let me see if I can.
Thanks so much. Elizabeth, what a joy. What an absolute joy to meet and chat with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I look forward to the day when we can meet in person, Geraldine.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Catherine and Margaret.
Okay.
And thanks for the song.
We have these photos I was trying to show earlier, and I didn't want to mess up things. So here we have a quick run through of Elizabeth's confirmation picture. And I know that must have been a brown suit, because we all wore those. Graduation back in 1962. A few girls in there in your Trinity graduating class.
Yeah.
And then Geraldine's grandmother, who had to meet somebody within cycling distance of her house in order to move into the world. And then a graduation picture of Limerick University. And I'm not sure what this is. One of your
I recorded a song at the opening of the Rosie Hackett Bridge with Martin Tourish from Alton, and the lyrics are by Councillor Tom O'Leary, and the song is all about Rosie Hackett and her role in Dublin and the Unionist movement, and right, so that was from there.
I see, nice. And then there you are, all jazzed up in your singing mode. And screen sharing. I think I got a few messages. You didn't see that, but anyway. Well, thank you again, everybody. Gonna
thank you, Catherine.
End the webinar now, and enjoy this get out and enjoy the rest of the nice weather today. So.
Yeah.
Oh, enjoy your vaccine, Margaret.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks a million. Take care, and good luck this afternoon, Margaret.
Thank you.